In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys a few different techniques that artists use to get their images from a photo to their paper or their canvas. So to get started, I went ahead and printed out this photo that I took of my friend. I've got painter's tape here, and I've got these charcoal sticks. You can get those from your local craft store or hobby store. An alternative to using the charcoal sticks is you could also use dry pastels. They'll work essentially the same way, but instead of getting the harsh black outline that I'll be getting, you'll be getting a softer pastel outline. So they're actually an even better option, but for demonstration purposes and to make sure it stands out with enough contrast, I am just going to go ahead and use charcoal. So to get started, I'm flipping my photo over and just rubbing the charcoal stick all over the back of it. Essentially, I'm making my own transfer paper. So transfer paper is another option. You could always buy transfer paper, but it does tend to be a little more expensive. So it's a much more cheaper alternative just to make your own transfer paper by covering the back with your charcoal stick. It might get your fingers a little messy, but no big deal there. So then now that I have my transfer paper, on the back of my photo, I'm going to go ahead and tape it down to my page. So again, the whole back side of this photo is covered with that charcoal base. So if I press too hard, it's going to rub off. So I need to go ahead and tape this image down to my paper. That way it doesn't move. Because if it does move, as you know, some of that charcoal might rub and smudge and it can just get messy instead of a clean outline. So I'm taping all of the corners of my paper down. Now I am using painter's tape to tape the edges. Painter's tape works a lot better than regular tape because regular tape is more prone to tearing your paper, tearing your page, and we never want that. So painter's tape is the way to go. Now what you're going to need is you're going to need something to press that coal onto your page. Now, I'm using a pen, but it's actually a dead pen, so you'll see no ink is coming out. And a dead pen works great because I really don't need ink here. All I'm really doing is applying pressure from that pen tip, and that pressure is applying that charcoal base. So here I am just kind of tracing over the most critical parts of this image. So things like the hairline, the eye placement, the face shape, basically the foundations. So I'm starting to create this really nice base. Now, when you guys are taking your photos or choosing the photo to print out, I always recommend taking your own photo. So this is a photo that I took of my friend Courtney out at Lou Gardens. And I absolutely love this photo, and I'm really excited to turn this into an art piece. But again, the benefit of using your own photos is you don't have to worry about plagiarism. If you take someone else's photo off the internet and you trace it, you're technically stealing their work. That's their composition, their art piece. Photography is an art form. So we never want to take off the internet. We want to make sure that they are our own original pieces. If you don't have a friend that can model for you, or you're in a pandemic, you could always model for yourself, maybe take your own selfie or your own picture and use that as your base. It's a really good way just to start to learn basic facial structure. The more you practice drawing, even if it's from a tracing from a photo, the better you'll get. Eventually you'll be able to know the placement of the eyes, of the proportions without even using a photo. But again, for getting started, doing a trace of the photograph is a really, really good way just to start to learn. So I am going to go ahead and speed this up at this point since I think you're getting the gist of it. All right, going super fast. All right, so now we can go ahead and I just took off the tape off of one side so I can flip it over and take a sneak peek at my base and see if there's anything else I want to add in. So I'm noticing now that I'm missing the neck and the shirt outline, so I am going to go ahead and get those in there. Maybe a few creases from the shirt. Just basically what I want to get is the most key parts of this photo, so that way I have those as my foundation before I go in and color this. All the details I can always add in later, but I just need some basic markers, so like that indent for the chin, things like that. This line I'm drawing here is going to help me really see the shadow for the cheekbone. And again, once I start coloring this, it looks kind of funky right now, but it really will come to life once I start incorporating shadows and shading and color. But there I have my really initial sketch, my initial transfer. All right, so now since we're going to do a new technique, I'm going to use a new reference image. So this is an illustration that I created previously, but let's say, for example, that I want to take this ink illustration and I want to maybe paint it, right? Or maybe I want to do it on watercolor paper, or maybe I want to put it onto a canvas. This technique is going to be really handy for transferring that sort of image. So and of course, all of these techniques I show you can be used in so many different ways, but for this, what I'm doing is I'm overlaying it with a sheet of tracing paper. Okay, so you can get, again, tracing paper from your local craft store. I really don't need to put the notebook behind it. I'm just doing it because I had it there and it's a softer surface than using the wooden table. And then I'm going to be using a carbon pencil. So the carbon pencil is going to create this really nice dark stroke that easily transfers onto the surface of my choice. So again, the key here is just to have that initial illustration. The illustration could really be done again on any medium. Maybe I did the illustration in my sketchbook. It doesn't really matter, but the key here is you're placing your tracing paper over top of your image. Now I am just making a mess right now with sharpening up my carbon pencil, but now I'm ready to go to create the initial outline. And you can really take your time here and work much more slowly, but I'm working kind of quickly just to show you how this process works with creating the initial outlines, creating that base foundation that I would use for my art piece. So I'm just kind of doing some quick gestures here, so that way when I work on my final piece, I have references. I have references for where the placement should be for each of these pieces, so I can create just a really proportionate composition. So again, just going over top of it with my carbon pencil. You guys might not be familiar with carbon pencils. So basically what a carbon pencil is, they're a little bit smoother than charcoal, but they also produce a much deeper, richer black than your traditional graphite pencils. So they're actually made with a mixture of clay and sometimes blended with charcoal. But again, this just creates a really smooth, dark, rich black, but it's also very soft. So if I touch this with my fingers, it would come off very easily. It would smudge very easily. So they're really good for blending or really good for transfer techniques. So again, I'm just kind of going around the outside here. And of course, you could use like the charcoal stump like I had before. You could use the dry pastels. You could use charcoal. You can use different mediums for it, but I am just using a carbon pencil since that's what I had available, and it does work really well because it's such a rich black. All right, so we've got our sketch here and we've got our tracing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift off this sheet of tracing paper that has that carbon pencil drawing on top of it. Again, I worked really quickly, but you can take all the time you need to really get your refined tracing. So then once I have that, I can go ahead and remove the second sheet of paper, and then we're ready to transfer it. So again, you don't have to transfer this onto your sketchbook. You could transfer this onto a canvas. Maybe you're doing a painting on a wooden panel. It's really up to you and your creativity, but you're gonna place that tracing paper face down, obviously, and tape it so it doesn't move, it doesn't shift. And then you're just going to press over top of it. So I'm using a blending stick to press it, but you can really use anything. You just need something hard and firm just to go ahead and press that carbon pencil onto the page. And then there I have it. So now I've got this really great base, this really great foundation that I can use to start to color on top of or paint on top of or just do any fun creative work with. So this last technique, it's probably my least favorite, but for those of you that don't have a lot of art supplies, this is going to be a really, really fantastic option for you because you really don't need many art supplies for this at all. So I'm just using my laptop here, and I'm tearing out a sheet out of my sketchbook pad, and I have my photo up. So this is that photo that I used earlier. It's the same exact photo, just pulled up on my computer. And now they sell things called a Lightbox, and Lightboxes are really awesome for doing tracing because they basically shoot light through your image to make it really easy for you to trace. But Lightboxes can get kind of pricey, so a really cheap solution is just to use your laptop. Everyone has a laptop, everyone has their screen, so all you really need to do is pull up the picture that you want to trace, and then go ahead and tape your paper over top of that image. Make sure you turn the brightness up on your screen. The higher your brightness, the easier it will be to really see through the paper, to see the details of that photo that you're tracing. But again, the reason why this is my least favorite is just because, I don't really like pressing onto my laptop screen. You have to be really gentle with it. You don't want to press too hard. You could damage the screen. And two, it's just hard to see through it, especially if you are trying to keep in your details or if you are using higher quality paper. But again, for those of us that might not have supplies, this is a really, really great solution. So even though I can't see details, that's okay. This is giving me enough of a guide to see the base pieces of this portrait, to see where the eyes should be placed, where the nose should be placed, all of that good stuff. Now, I'm just using the carbon pencil because that's what I had available because I just used it, but you don't need to. You could use your standard pencil or really the medium of your choice. But again, I'm just using the carbon pencil because that's what I had available. But the benefit to using the carbon pencil here is I can take this image that I now have on my drawing paper, and again, I can transfer this onto a canvas, or I could transfer this onto a wooden panel, or onto maybe watercolor paper. I can transfer it wherever I want, again, by using that same technique that I showed earlier, where you press it onto the surface and then use your stump to apply it. So I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. I'm just going to go ahead and turn to a new page of my book, lay this face down. Ideally, you would tape down the paper again and then just use that blending stump over top, and it would give you that initial outline, which again makes for a great foundation. Of course, there's so many other techniques out there. I just wanted to show you a few of the most commonly used and a few really great solutions. So I hope you found this video helpful, and now you're all ready to go out and trace your drawings or trace your photos and bring them to life in a creative medium. Thanks so much for watching, and take care.